Okay, boys and girls, we are starting chapter 4. Alright, chapter 4. When are we going to get there? Asked Nala, running back and neck with Simba. We passed that termite mound ages ago. Soon, I hope, said Simba. I just used that termite mound as an excuse to get away from Zazu. Nala stopped running and stretched out on the grass. Well, I need a rest. Simba trotted over to her. Come on, get up. I bet we're almost there. No answer. Simba leaned over and looked at Nala closely. Her eyes were closed and her tongue was hanging out. Nala, asked Simba, are you okay? Nala sprang to her feet and threw Simba to the ground. Pindya, she said playfully. Hey, let me up, cried Simba. Nala released her hold. Listen, Nala, Simba said, getting annoyed. Stop kidding around. We have to get going. Nala leapt forward and knocked Simba to the ground. Pindya again, she cried, and dashed off laughing. Simba ran to catch up. After a few minutes, he looked behind them. Good, he said. We've lost Zazu. Where are we? Asked Nala. Look at this place. There's no trees or anything, and the air looks all misty. It's really creepy. Yeah, let's go check it out, said Simba. Simba, what's that weird rumbling sound? Said Nala. Simba listened. The sound was coming from under the ground. Gosh, he said, I don't know. The sound grew louder and louder. Whoosh! With a gigantic flash, a gush of steam exploded in the air. Look out, shouted Simba. They were both thrown to their feet, and they landed several yards away. What was that? Gasped Nala. She wiggled her legs to make sure she was still all in one piece. Oh, said Simba. His back hurt. He's been thrown against something hard. After the stream cleared, he thought what it was. He looked into the empty eye socket of the enormous elephant skull. Simba was delighted. This is it, he cried. This is the elephant graveyard. Wow, this is great, said Nala. Look at those bones. Let's get a good look at this skull, Simba suggested. Just 1 minute, squawked Zazu. Coming for a landing, Simba looked startled. Then he smiled weakly. Oh, hi, Zazu. You must leave here immediately, demanded Zazu. This is way beyond the boundary of the Pride Lands, and now we're all in real danger. Danger? Ha! Boosted Simba. Watch me laugh in the face of danger. He tossed back his head and laughed loudly. Just then other voices laughed from inside the elephant skull. Simba, Nala, and Zazu backed up, giggling like mad. Those drooling hyenas climbed up to greet them. Hyenas! gasped Zazu. We're done for! A foul-smelling hyena with a filthy mane sniffed in the air. Well, Benzie, he said to his companions. What do we got here? Benzie chuckled. I don't know, Shinzi, he said. What do you think, Ed? Ed giggled. Hee. That's just what I was thinking, said Benzie. A trio of trespassers. Zazu nervously whispered to Simba and Nala. Try to leave quietly, he instructed them. While I do the talking. I assure you, he explained to the hyenas. We've arrived here purely by mistake. We were just on our way out. Shinzi circled around Zazu for a closer look. All at once, something dawned on her. She reached out and grabbed him by the neck. I know you, she said. You work for Mufasa. I, Madame Zazu, announced with pride, am the king's personal secretary. Pansy circled around Simba. And that would make you, he began. The future king, said Simba. He stood tall as he could. Shinzi realized Zazu, who fluttered over to stand between Simba and Nala. Then the hyena smiled, showing her sharp, dirty teeth. You know what we do to kings who step out of their kingdom? She asked Simba. You can't do anything to me, said Simba. Oh, but they can, Zazu said under his breath. We are on their land. But Zazu, said Simba, they sneak on our land all the time. What I meant was, said Shinzi, we'd love to have you stick around for dinner. Sure, said Banzi. We can eat what's lying around here. Ed snickered. Banzi made a grab for Simba's tail. Wait a minute, Banzi, said Shinzi. I'm having the lion cubs. You grab the bird. Oh, no, you don't, Banzi argued. I haven't snacked on a cub for years. You grab the bird and I'll grab the cubs. Oh, no, you don't, Shinzi said. You get the bird and I'll take the cubs. Come on, Zazu muttered to Simba and Nala. Let's sneak out of here while they're while they're fighting. Simba and Nala quietly backed away. As soon as they were out of sight, they ran. Ed saw the cubs go. Frantically, he tried to let Shinzi and Bananzi know, but they were too busy arguing to notice. All right, said Banzi. We split the bird. I get the wings, cried Shinzi. Oh, sure, said Banzi, and I get stuck with the bill. Okay, said Shinzi. We'll split the bill. Suddenly, Ed poked his nose between them and started gesturing wildly. What, Ed, what? Yelled Shinzi. Hey, cried Banzi, seeing the cubs go in the distance. Did we order this dinner to go? 'Cause there it goes. After them! Shrieked Shinzi. Chapter 5. Still running hard, Simba glanced back over his shoulder. Good, no one in sight. We made it, he shouted to Nala. We made it, Zazu! Zazu? Nala, where's Zazu? Nala stopped to catch her breath. She cocked her head and listened. Do you hear that? She asked. The hyenas are laughing hysterically. Maybe they've caught Zazu. We better go see, said Simba. No need for that, said Shinzi. Suddenly appeared. We're right here. Ed was right behind her, giggling. Simba, Nala screamed. Simba took a hard swipe at Shinzi, forcing back and yelled, Run, Nala! As these two cubs raced toward the graveyard, Simba spotted an enormous pile of bones. Quick, he said, let's try to climb over it. As they scrambled up the pile, Banzi's head poked from between an elephant's bones. Boot, he said. Simba and Nala backtracked into a hurry and bumped right into Shinzi and Ed. You two going somewhere? Asked Shinzi. The two cubs skittered between her legs and dashed up another pile of bones. Watch out, said Simba, warned Nala. It's really shaky up there. Just as he spoke, they both lost their footing and fell. Nala gasped. They'd laid inside the giant ribcage. We're trapped, she said to Simba. Shinza and Banzi giggled and shuddered up to them. How convenient, said Banzi and Shinza. Which snack do you want? Simba felt his heart beating wildly. Maybe he could frighten them with a roar. And then he'd heard his father do it enough times. He took a deep breath. Roar, he squealed. The hyenas broke into friends' laughter. What was that? Asked Shinzi. Come on, do it again. Come on, kitty, 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 she taunted. Simba took another deep breath. Roar! The three hyenas spun around. They looked straight into the furious eyes of the huge lion. It's King Mufasa! Gasped Shinzi. Quick, guys, she said to Banzi and Ed. Let's get out of here! Mufasa roared again and the hyenas fled, howling into the mist. Dad, Simba said, try not to cry. I am glad to see you. You have disobeyed me, Mufasa growled. Simba had never heard his father sound so angry. I'm sorry, Dad. Really, he said. Before Simba could say anything else, Zazu limped up to them. His feathers were battered and tangled and his bill slightly bent. Zazu! Cried Simba and Nala. Good gracious, man! Mufasa exclaimed. What happened to you? Sir, explained Zazu, I felt simply awful about all this, but I must point out, it's not your fault, Zazu, said the king. Now, will you please let me escort Nala home? I'm going to teach my son a lesson. Mufasa waited until he and his son were alone. Simba, he said, I'm very disappointed in you. You could have been killed, and what's worse, you put Nala in danger, not to mention what happened to poor Zazu. Simba felt terrible. He let his father down. His father, who meant the world to him. I was just trying to be brave like you, he tried to explain. Mufasa stared, trembling, said, It made his heart ache to think what could have happened. I'm only brave when I have to be, he said gently. But you're not scared of anything, said Simba. I was today, said his father. I thought I might lose you. Just remember, being brave doesn't mean you go looking for trouble. Then he smiled. Let's go home. It's getting late. Your mother's worried about you. The sun was setting. As soon as it slipped beyond the distant purple hills, the air felt cold. A full moon appeared, and stars twinkled in the blackening sky. Father, said Simba, trotting alongside the king, we'll always be together, right? Mufasa stopped. Simba, let me tell you something. Something my father told me. Look at the stars. Simba gazed upward. The great kings of the past look down from us, those stars, said his father. Really? Said Simba. Yes, said Mufasa. So whenever you feel alone, just remember, they'll always be there to guide you, and so will I. Simba nodded. I remember. Not far away, Scar was meeting with the hyenas. I told you 100 times, boss, we're sorry, Banzi said to the king's angry brother. I practically delivered those cubs to you, Scar snarled. You had a perfect opportunity to get rid of that little pest, Simba. What were we supposed to do? Asked Banzi. Kill Mufasa? Precisely, Scar said. Shenzi's jaw dropped. Are you kidding? She asked. Scar grinned at her. I guess not, said Shenzi. Who needs a king anyway? Yeah, who needs a king? Echoed Banzi. You idiot, scuffled Scar. There will be a king. Me! If you stick with me, you hyenas will be treated well. Very well indeed. Sounds good to me, said Banzi. Now listen, you mongrels. I have a little plan, Scar whispered. The hyenas listened in and listened. Then Shenzi and Banzi smiled broadly at each other. Ed threw back his head and laughed. Chapter 6. The next morning, Simba followed Scar to the bottom of the wide, deep gorge. The cub cautiously picked up his way down the jagged rocks. Every now and then he tripped. Careful, my little ones, Scar said sweetly. We don't want you to fall, do we? Where are we going, Uncle Scar? Asked Simba. Scar didn't answer. When they reached the bottom, he led his nephew to a flat rock in the middle of the gorge. Hop up, he said. He prodded Simba up on the rock. Wait here. Your father has a marvelous surprise for you. He turned to leave. Now I'll just go tell him that you're ready. Simba was restless. I'll go with you. Just stay on that rock, Scar insisted. You don't want to disobey your father and end up in another mess like you did yesterday with the hyenas. You know about that? Asked Simba. Simba, my boy, replied Scar. Everyone knows about it, and just between us, you might want to work on that little roar of yours. Scar looped up away and left his nephew all alone. Little roar, huh? Said Simba. He centered himself on the rock and drew a deep breath. Urgh! Urgh! Simba stopped roaring when he heard the mournful honking sounds of wild beasts in the distance. After a few minutes, he noticed a large herd of wild beasts moving through the top of the ridge. He sighed impatiently. What was keeping Dad? Shinza, Banzi, and Ed waited for Scar's signal. Where is he? Banzi asked, peering down into the gorge. I'm so hungry. I gotta have wild beasts. They're coming this way. If he doesn't hurry, they'll be gone. The whole plan will fall apart. You know we have to wait until Scar gives us the sign, said Shinzi. Then we can make our move. Look, he yelped. There's Scar. There's the signal. Let's go! Whooping wildly, the hyenas chased after the unexpectedly wild beast, nibbling sharply at their heels. They startled animals below and began to stampede. Drive them down to the gorge, Shinzi yelled to her comrades. What do you think I'm trying to do? Coughed Banzi, spitting out dust. A few minutes later, Ed laughed hysterically at the herd veered toward the rim of the gorge. There they go! Howled Banzi. We did it! At that moment, Mufasa was taking his usual stroll along the top of the gorge. Zazu, perched at his master's back, was reporting the news of the day. Look, sir, he pointed out with his wings. The herd is on the move. They're coming this way. That's odd, noted Mufasa, and he watched the friend's wild beast, and his brother, Scar, ran up to him. Mufasa, he shouted, quick, a stampede! Simba's down there! I'll fly ahead, cried Zazu. Mufasa lunged toward the edge of the gorge. Tell my son I'm coming. Simba watched the wild beasts pour down the side of the gorge. There were thousands of them, and they were heading right at him. Wildly scrambling down from the rock, he ran for his life. Before he knew it, the stampede was practically upon him. The noise of the hooves was deafening, and the dust was so thick that Simba could hardly see. But ahead his path, he dimly made out the outline of the enormous ancient baobab tree, and if he could just reach it before he got trampled to death. Running so fast he thought his heart would burst, Simba reached a bamboo and clawed on his way onto the ribbed trunk. He crawled out into a wide, sturdy-looking limb. Simba! Squawked Zazu. He flew through the blinding dust and landed on top of the tree. Hold on, your father's on the way. Simba leaned back to Zazu. As he shifted his weight, the limb creaked and started to break off. Zazu! Screamed Simba. Help me! Zazu squeaked through the dust air and saw Mufasa battling his way through the herd of the wild beasts. "He's over here, sir," he shouted. Snap! The old limb broke, and Simba fell into the hard ground. Mufasa grabbed his son in his mouth, dodging his way through the stampeding animals. He managed to get Simba up on a rocky ledge on the side of the gorge. "Oh, Dad," sobbed Simba. "You came just in time. A galloping wild beast knocked Mufasa from the ledge." The king fell backwards and was swept away in the stampede. "Dad!" cried Simba. "Dad!" Several minutes later, Mufasa managed to pull himself up toward the top of the gorge. Injured and in pain, he clung to an overhanging rock. Slowly he looked up to see his brother posed above him. "Scar, help me!" he cried. Scar leaned over and dug his paw into Mufasa's front legs. Then with a deadly push, he whispered, "Long live the king!" Mufasa slid down the step, dragged incline, and was still. Scar looked from the rim of the gorge and grinned. One down and one to go. It was too bad that Mufasa had rescued Simba, but his nephew would be taken care of soon enough. He squinted. Was that the little fellow now? It was. Simba was running around the bottom of the gorge. He'd spotted Mufasa lying on the trampled dirt. By the time Scar reached him, Simba was sobbing next to the dead king. "Dad," whispered Simba. He buried his face in his father's dusty mane. "Simba," demanded Scar, "what have you done?" "It was an accident," Simba wailed. "He came to save me." Sadly, Scar shook his head. "If it weren't for you, he'd still be alive." "But I didn't mean it, Uncle Scar," said Simba. "Of course you didn't," said Scar. "No one ever means for those things to happen. But the king is dead, and you can never show your face in this pride again." Simba looked up wide-eyed. "What am I going to do?" "Run away, Simba," said Scar. "Run away and never return." He watched his nephew run, sobbing down the length of the gorge. Shenzi and Banzi ambled up behind Scar. "Nice work," said Banzi. "You got rid of him." "Now finish the job," ordered Scar, still staring at Simba. "Kill him now." Scar strode triumphantly to Pride Rock. As soon as he arrived, he called Sherbi and Zazu to appear before him. "I have dreadful news," he told them. "My dear brother, Mufasa, his cherished nephew, Simba, are dead." "No, no," moaned Sherbi. Zuzu was stumbled to speak. He tried to pull himself together to counsel the queen. "I'm so sorry," he said gently. "Is there anything I can do for you?" But the weight of the news had crushed Sherbi. She slowly sank to the ground. "You must take comfort that your husband died a hero," said Scar. "It's with a heavy heart that I assumed the throne. However, we must never forget how great Mufasa and his beloved son were." The loneliness of the Pride Rock heard Sherbi's cry of grief, and they rushed to her side. When they learned the news, their wails echoed across the plain. By nightfall, thousands of animals had journeyed to the Pride Rock. Their last visit had been one of the joys to welcome the new prince. This time, they came in grief, mourning his death and that of his father. Atop a high ridge, Rafiki sadly shook his head. Then, broken-hearted, the old baboon wandered off to be alone. When Rafiki reached his home, he approached a familiar painting on the inside of a hollow tree. For a long, silent moment, he gazed at the image of the lion cub, then sadly ran his hand over it. Hi guys, we are going to read chapter 7. Simba stumbled across the dry, crackled earth. Thank goodness the hyenas had stopped chasing him. They had turned back after getting stuck in a mass of thorn bushes. But before the hyenas had abandoned the chase, Simba had heard them scream after him. "If you ever come back, we'll kill you!" Simba sighed. They probably thought they couldn't make it out of here on his own anyway. And they were right. He was exhausted and very thirsty. The air was so hot, and the plain shimmered before his eyes. There wasn't a tree in sight. If he didn't find some shade in a waterhole soon, he'd pass out. But really, he didn't care if he lived or died. If it hadn't been for him, his father would still be alive. Simba took a few more shaky steps. A shadow passed overhead, and he looked up. In the bright white sky, huge vultures slowly circled around him. His knees buckled, and he fainted. The hungry birds deceased toward Simba. Silently, they grunted around and bent over him. "Ee-haw!" cried a loud voice. a fat brown warthog with a skinny meerkat perched on his back, charged toward the surprised vultures. "Ee-yaw!" shouted the merkin again. "Get out, stinking buzzards!" The startled vultures scattered and took off. The meerkat hopped and tiptoed cautiously over Simba for a closer look. "All right," he chattered. "What do we have here?" Standing on his hind legs, the merkin carefully lifted Simba's limp paw and examined it. After a minute or two, he dropped it in alarm. "Good grief!" he croaked at the warthog. "It's a lion, and he's alive! Run, Pumbaa! But first, wait for me." He clambered back onto the warthog. "Let's go, go, go!" But Pumbaa didn't run. Instead, he strutted over to take a look for himself. Squinting to see better, he peered down at the cub. "Oh, Timon," he snorted. "It's just a little lion. Look at him. He's so cute and all alone. Can we keep him?" "Pumbaa!" Timon whispered in his companion's ear. "We're talking about a lion. Lions eat guys like us." "But he's so little," insisted Pumbaa. "He's going to get bigger," pointed out Timon. "Maybe, if he gets to know us, he'll be by our side," suggested Pumbaa. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard," snorted Timon. Then he scratched his head. Having a lion around to protect us might be not such a bad idea after all. "So we're keeping him?" asked Pumbaa. "Of course," said Timon. Pumbaa knelt down his front legs and scooped up Simba with his snout, carefully bouncing the cub between his tusks. He got to his feet. "Easy does it," said Timon. "We've got a long walk ahead of us. Try not to drop him." Later that day, Simba opened his eyes and blinked. A warthog and a meerkat were leaning over him. "Here, open up," said Timon. He poured some water into Simba's dry mouth. "Are you okay?" "I guess so," answered Simba. He felt much better. "You nearly died," said Pumbaa. "We saved you." "Thanks a lot for your help," said Simba. "But I have to go now." He got to his feet and started to walk off. "Where are you going?" asked Timon. Simba paused inside. "Nowhere." "Pumbaa," Timon said under his breath. "I think our little lion here is depressed." "Come back," he called to Simba. "Tell us where you're from." "Doesn't matter," said Simba. "Nothing matters anymore." "Sounds serious," said Timon. "Did you do something bad?" "Not just bad," said Simba. "Something terrible, but I don't want to talk about it." "That's all right," said Pumbaa kindly. "You don't have to." "That's right," said Timon. "Put your past behind you. Forget it. Hakuna Matata." "What?" said Simba. "Hakuna Matata," Timon repeated. "It means no worries, no responsibilities. That's our philosophy." "Why don't you stay here with us?" asked Pumbaa. Simba thought it over. Why not? He had nowhere else to go, and it would be nice to have somebody to talk to. "I will," he said. "Thanks." He looked around, really seeing the place for the first time. It wasn't anything like the open plain. Here, everything was leafy and grew close together. Lots of trees, very tall trees, shaded in the ground, makes it cool under his feet. And high in the branches, red-tailed monkeys and noisy parrots searched for fruits and nuts. "Where are we?" asked Simba. Timon looked surprised. You've never been in the jungle before?" he asked. "Well then, welcome to our humble home." He pushed back a huge feathery fern next to him. Simba peeked in and saw a comfortable-looking spot on the ground, covered with palm leaves. Blooming flowers, woven among twisted vines, brightened up the place. "It's beautiful," he told them. "Do you live here all the time?" "We live where we want," said Timon. "We do what we want. We know how it is. We live the good life." "By the way," Timon asked them, "are you hungry?" "I sure am," said Simba. Things were really looking up. "Well then," said the merkeet, "we'll find you something to eat." Timon and Pumbaa carefully searched the jungle floor. Finally, they stopped to have a heavy fallen log. "This looks like a good spot to find some grub," said Timon. "See if you can budge it, Pumbaa." Pumbaa got on his knees and, grunting, shoved the log with his snout. Timon felt it under and grinned. "Good," he said to Simba as he hopped up on Pumbaa's snout. "Enough for all of us." Simba stared at Timon's upturned paw. "It isn't squirming fat worm?" "What's that?" he asked, stepping back. "I told you, a grub," said Timon. He popped one into his mouth. "You are a meat eater. Try one." "They're nasty." "They're tasty." Simba wrinkled his nose. "Ew!" "Go on," urged Pumbaa. "You'll learn to love them." "Tastes like chicken," asked Timon. Simba took a deep breath. He was really hungry, and there didn't seem to be much of a choice. He picked up a grub and chewed it. "Well, what do you think?" asked Timon. "Slimy, yet Satisfying, said Simba, surprised at himself. Timon smiled. See, you'll love it here in the jungle. Just remember, our problem, free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. Right, said Simba. Hakuna Matata.